I wanted to thank National Geographic for inviting me into this kind of prestigious place to give a talk. I know some crazily important people have walked these same boards, so it's really, really a complete honour to be here. And I also wanted to thank all you for coming here and feigning friendship and interest in the name of free wine. So before I start on the adventure, the cycle to India, I needed to set the picture for you. I first finished university and I started work in the city in front of a computer, walking like a zombie to and from the office. And I was kind of seeing all my friends, they were kind of gathering bigger and more shiny things, and at the same time kind of becoming more and more and more unhappy. And I remember thinking at that point, is this what life is from now on? And my one lease of life at this point was that I'd go cycling with my buddies, and a whole load of you all here as well. And we'd go cycling, we'd go all around the UK and up into the Alps and the Pyrenees, and it was the one release. And one time I was cycling with some of the guys who were over this way, Stephen Bell for one, just give us a wave. He caused trouble. And there was Lawrence, who was actually the one that was hurting me at the time that this event happened. But so we were cycling in Nice, and I clipped Steve's wheel, and the clipping of the wheel flipped my bike to the right-hand side, kind of turned it 180 degrees. But unfortunately, cycling on the right-hand side of the road, there was a cliff to my right-hand side, and I flipped off the road and down a 10-metre cliff without any, nothing to hit along the way. And suddenly, what I remember is kind of gaining my kind of consciousness again gaining my consciousness at the bottom of the cliff, but not being able to move any of my limbs. And suddenly I kind of got a feeling in my kind of left leg and then my right leg, and then it kind of burst up my chest and down my arms and into my vocal cords. And I kind of looked up at the screaming eyes above me and kind of was, I think I'm alive! And at that point, when I was actually falling to what should have been my certain death, I was more alive than I probably had been for the past 5 years. And I kind of made a decision right there and then that I was going to change my life for the better and try and start make a difference to this world. So I became a junior school teacher. And that's not funny. You've all drunk too much wine. So I became a junior school teacher, and I was kind of graced with cycling to work, and I would come across 30 smiling faces looking up at me, and we basically had a complete ball in the classroom. And so I've got a few examples. So we for history, we graffitied the whole one wall of the school with all the historic kind of events that with Churchill like this and not like this, just for the kids' sake. And this was, we were studying Jason Pollock, and he drips art, so we decided we were going to flick art, and the school were going to throw away all the paints we got and replace them all. So I asked them to be put into my classroom, and then bought a suit and goggles and held the canvases whilst the kids each kind of made a painting for themselves. And we climbed trees in maths and all this sort of stuff. And the kids would used to say to me, Mr. Bent, you're embarrassing yourself. You're embarrassing yourself. And then one day we had an assembly, and one of the girls was getting married, and I was one of the only men in the school, and I was chosen to be the bride. And there was one girl who used to say, you're embarrassing yourself, Lucy. And I walked down the aisle. We'd made sure that there was in the assembly there was a route down the middle. And she kind of caught my eye looking up at me, and I probably gave her a smile or something, and she said, Mr. Bent, you've gone too far this time, sir. and so that's kind of where the name kind of came from. Anyway, so we like to have fun in the classroom, and so there was one subject, Chembakoli. We were comparing our Hampton Wick, where the school was, with a place in India, southern India, Chembakoli. So it's a bit like Avatar, where there's just huts, 200 metres space, there's a sacred tree, that sort of stuff. And we'd compare our lives with their lives, but the kids couldn't really get it. They were kind of, you're only 7 years old, and how, they haven't had enough experience in life to understand that this actually exists. So for them, it was more like just hearing a story, and they weren't kind of engaging with it, and the kids would be looking out the window, and I met up with a friend of mine, Louisa, and we were discussing how we could kind of bring this subject to life for the kids to make it actually entertaining for them, because we were absolutely loving it. And so we decided that they needed to see someone they're kind of familiar with in the village. So someone like Robbie Williams, or a really good-looking guy, probably. And basically, after a few drinks and a few more whiskies and a few more drinks and a few more gins, we decided. Well, I kind of said, "Well, how about I go out there?" And eventually, it came about that I was going to go and teach at this school in Chembakoli to try and bring this topic on the national curriculum to life. And it came to me telling the kids that I was leaving the school. It was about 2 months before the end of term, and it was a bit like this. Slightly younger people, and at the back there, instead of the posters, there were posters of planes, trains, cycles, scooters, this sort of stuff, cars, and next to the plane was a big cross, and with a big unhappy face, and next to the car was exactly the same, slightly smaller, because we were trying to encourage the kids to cycle into work and be healthy and be good for the environment. And so when I told them, one of the boys put his hand up and said, "How are you going to get there?" And initially I thought, I'm going to fly. How else am I going to get there? And I saw at the back of the classroom where he was looking, there was the symbols and everything. And I had a split-second decision, and the first tick was a bicycle. So that's how it all came about. And so I had to speak to a bewildered kind of school in India, and they were I said, I'm going to be a few months late arriving. And they just could not grasp it at all. And I told my dad, and just like anyone who knows my dad, he can get on it. And when I told him, he was straight onto the maps. He was plotting all my maps through Europe, because there were obviously the places that were going to be a little bit more tricky to find the routes because there's so many roads. And he would go into this is by day, he would be doing this, and then he would go into the offices, and he was getting all my visas for my passport whilst I was still kind of teaching, and because I didn't have any time, because it's end of kind of term, and so everything's going on in the evening, so I didn't have time to sort anything out. But by evening, he was lying asleep, and mum would be woken by his kind of whimpering and fear that I was going to die, basically, along this trip. And I found out later on that Mum actually thought the same thing, but at this point here, I just want everyone to put their hands together for my dad for being a legend and sorting stuff out, and also for putting up with me. And I told Mum as well, and I was expecting, I'm a mummy's boy, and I thought Mum, I don't know, I thought she might collapse at this moment, but she was really, really strong, and she was like, "Yep, okay, Dan, that sounds, that's a good idea. We're gonna, help you, support you get through this." I was absolutely shocked. This is not Mum behaviour. Anyone who knows her will absolutely know that for sure. And it turns out, I kind of said to her, "Why aren't you worried?" And she said, "Well, you told me, when you were when I was actually at junior school at 11 years old, I stood up where I am now, kind of in front of all the parents and the younger children, with all my classmates, and the head teacher said, 'What do you want to do when you leave school?' And they kind of went along the line, and first off, politician, doctor, vet, footballer, and the list goes on, and it comes to this little quirky thing with the freckles and the big ears, and I said I wanted to cycle around the world and raise money for charity. So, and Mum had been kind of preparing for this for 20 years. And cycling around the world is all about pushing pedals, isn't it? Wrong. It's something that I thought I was going to love, waving regally at farmers, elephants, monkeys, whilst they or I or all of us drank tea together. And so I thought it was going to be easy. I thought it was something I loved. But I didn't actually help things by it being 12 o'clock at night, the night before I was supposed to be leaving, or meeting everyone at 7 o'clock the next morning with nothing packed at all, everything still in boxes. And at 11 o'clock, these are the guys, this was all cycling down to Dover together, my kind of support crew. It was awesome. What I was doing was actually sewing on this badge, which one of the girls at school had bought me as a kind of a lucky charm onto my jersey. So I had this lucky charm, and I didn't have anything else. And by about 3 o'clock or something, I just kind of threw the stuff in the panniers and just hoped for the best. But by doing this, it meant that the first moment I was on my own was in Calais, and it took me about 3 hours to get out of Calais. And in doing so, the only way I could find was on the motorway. And I was soon to be pulled over by the police and escorted with flashing lights off the motorway. So it was a good start to the trip. My other lack of organisation was my stove. So the first night when I am using my stove, it's one of those ones with the petrol that comes through. And I turned it on and I was trying to light it with Lawrence's matches he'd given me. That they say they'll light under any conditions. I couldn't light them when it was sunny. But anyway, I eventually kind of put match to fuel. But what I didn't know is that the stove had been upside down, leaking all over the floor, throughout everyone's tents. And when I lit it, there was this massive ball of flames went up in the campsite, which was, anyway. And you get past the first day, and then basically I was chased by wild dogs the whole way. If it wasn't chased by wild dogs, I was being chased by wild prostitutes. And neither of which I had anything to do with, apart from the one time where I had to run one of them over, and I won't tell you if it was a dog or a prostitute. You have to read the book. And then there were gypsies who would try and take my things. There were gun-touting drunks quite regularly, and trucks bearing down on you when you're on a very, very small lane with a drop-off here, and absolutely no room, just enough room for 2 trucks to pass, and they're going along kind of like past me. And this all kind of accumulated in Russia. So I stopped, and a bunch of gypsies came out, and they were trying to take everything off my bicycle, and I eventually got away from them, and then I was greeted by a group of kids, and I absolutely love kids, so I stopped. They all surrounded me and then tried to sell me a dead cat. So there's a little bit of vomit in the back of the throat there. And I'm starting to really feel the pressure of the trip, and I'm feeling tired, and there's really, really negative vibes here, and I was going along on the final road into Volgograd, and I was going along with the trucks either side, like, and when and then suddenly I'm incredibly lucky at that point, but I kind of was thinking to myself, people aren't really treating me how I wanted to be treated, with the kids trying to sell me cats and people trying to steal my stuff and trucks trying to kill me. And I decided right there and then that I was actually I'd made it across Europe. I made one whole continent. I almost forgot what that was then. That'd be bad in the National Geographic. One continent, and so I logged onto the BA website, and I also logged onto my emails back home, and the BA website was slower than my email, so I saw the emails first, and suddenly it was just like bing, 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 loads and loads of emails from the kids from school, from friends, from family, saying how, they were saying how proud they were, what a great thing I was doing, and not one from the kids saying I was embarrassing myself or going too far. So that was the encouragement I needed. I was going to shut the computer down, I was back on the bike, and I was doing it for the kids. So next stop was, so I set off into Central Asia, and I basically spent the first part of Central Asia in the desert on my own with the shits and having no shower and no toilet paper. And anyone who's read the book already knows I like talking about toilets. I think one person described it on Amazon as a world tour of toilets. They're fascinating. So it's 40 degrees heat. There's a sandstorm blowing all the time, 14 days, and you're having diarrhea in the desert with no toilet paper. And then, to make matters worse, you're getting back onto a bike. So you can imagine what was going on there, but it wasn't very nice. Also in Kazakhstan, we were kind of on this sandy bit, and there was a big cobra, a 2-meter long cobra, in the... I probably should have flipped through a few here, sorry. I'll do it fairly slowly. That was supposed to be when I was getting... Oh, don't worry. Where's Russia? This is, yeah, the stands. Anyway, so there was a cobra, and it was, I was trying to go to the left, round it, and it raised up, and it was just like, and so I tried to go to the right, exactly the same was happening, and so this is probably a good time to introduce Shirley, but no one can see her at the back because all those nasty people put chairs in front of her. But Shirley started life as my bicycle, my ride, carrying everything I hoped a man would need to survive through deserts, mountains, everything else. And we ended the trip a little bit older, both of us, a little bit older, a little bit more windswept, but we ended as lovers. And when Lance Armstrong said it's not about the bike, he was not talking about cycle touring. Shirley was invited as a guest of me to a wedding in Pakistan, and all the locals dressed her up all kind of fancy as you see now, but a lot more. A lot of it fell off when I was in India. And then when she was in India, every single person wanted to touch her. I'd put the bike down, stand over here, and the crowds would be around the bike, and I'd be just kind of standing there tapping my feet, kind of, what about me? So she was the true star of the show. I think I've got a picture of her just before we set off. So she's carrying quite a bit of weight. Oh yeah, right. Next stop was Uzbekistan, and in Russia I got taken to a gun shop to buy defence against the Uzbeks because they said that the police are corrupt and there's loads and loads of gangsters. They're going to take your stuff and they're going to kill you. In Kazakhstan, I stopped in a tiny little village, and there was one person who could speak English, and the person called them on their phone and said, "You've got to get here. You've got to speak to this man. He's thinking of going to Uzbekistan." And she said to me, "If you go to Uzbekistan, you are going to die. There's no doubting it." But I kind of stayed faithful to what my route and my kind of love of humans. And kind of, I think they're decent people. I cannot explain myself very well. And I went on in, and it wasn't long before I met the gangsters. But the gangsters took me out for dinner. They showed me all the sights. I didn't have to pay for a single thing. Everywhere I went, people got on their knees and touched my feet, because I knew them. And then you meet the police. There's thousands of checkpoints in Uzbekistan. You meet the police, and I would either pull out the ukulele, or they'd make me play the ukulele whilst they rode on my bike round the checkpoint, or they'd be playing the ukulele and they'd be threatening me with death if I didn't dance for them. So they all seemed pretty nice. But then I kind of came into a pretty precarious situation. I got into Tashkent, which is the area for being notorious for dodgy police and causing mischief to travellers. And it was pointed out to me that obviously I didn't have books with me whilst I went. I didn't have Lonely Planets, otherwise my panniers would have been full with Lonely Planets and nothing else. As it was, they had balloons, games, musical instruments, I had everything. And so they said to me that you needed to, within 3 days, you needed to have checked into a hotel and you get papers every time you check in. And then every day from then on, you needed to check in and get a paper. And I had no papers. I'd either stayed in my tent or I had stayed in tea houses and things like this along the way, either sleeping on a table or below a table. So I was facing a $2,000 fine. And luckily I managed to kind of get away from them and was trying to find accommodation so I could kind of look up, kind of get and hide from them until I worked out what I was going to do. And I got into a hotel, and one of them kind of said, problem. I was like, yeah, I know, I haven't got the papers. He said, no, your visa has expired by 10 days. And at that point, it was looking like I was going to be flown back out of the country back home after all that blooming hard work. And so then I thought, and it's absolutely amazing that Derek is here. Derek is a guy who I train with, and he'd given me one contact. I'd had one contact for the whole of my trip, and it was a guy called Maksud, and his sister is here as well, which is completely friggin' awesome. And so Derek, I got this thing out that Derek had given me, and I thought, yeah, it's a contact in Tashkent. So I phoned up Maksud, and he came to get me straight away, whizzed round. Within seconds, he was kind of there. And even more fortunately, he knew the Russian mafia. And he said, well, basically, we went to meet up with the Russian mafia, and we pulled into this darkened alley, and there was a car down there that looked like a Mini, but a little bit smaller. And if you can imagine a guy who's probably about 7 foot and about as tall as I am wide getting out of a Mini, that's what I kind of experienced. You're coming out like this, and then he kind of got into the back of our car. You felt the kind of car go like this as he sat in it, and then we drove off. And those two talked as we drove, and then we got to this house, massive house. I don't know how it couldn't be hidden in Uzbekistan, but anyway. The Russian guy gets there. He's got 4 keys, and he opens them, and opens this door, and it's about this thick. The door is, and there's another door behind it, and he needs 4 more keys to open that door. He opens that one. It's exactly the same thickness, and we all go inside. We shut the doors, lock them, and these kind of suits of armour, statues, all sorts of modern technology all over the place. It's an absolute palace. And it happens that was a Russian safe house. And Maksud said to me, he spoke fantastic English, he said, you're going to stay here and we're going to come get you when we're ready. And so they shut both the doors. First door shuts, you can hear the keys. Next one shuts, you can just about hear it as we through the other door. And so I was left there for 2 days watching Russian movies, kind of Hollywood movies dubbed in Russian. That was all I did for 2 days, getting more and more petrified, like what the hell is going on? And then Maksud turned up on the second day's morning, and he said, right, we're going. And he said, keep your head down whenever we go past police guards. And we just zoomed out of town. And he dropped me at the highway where I'd come in, and then we got the bike out, and I was able to set off on my way, because the checkpoints on the highways, you're generally just signing your name, putting your passport number in. There wasn't too much checks, and really, to be quite honest, I've been meaning to say this whole way, so I'm ruining the whole story. But so the gangsters, when I met them, they were saying that I looked like Wayne Rooney, and then when I met the police, they were saying exactly the same, which is that's the worst compliment you could ever be paid, isn't it? But at these checkpoints, it was just amazing. It didn't happen anywhere else. But in Uzbekistan, everyone thought I was Wayne Rooney. And so I'd go to the checkpoints, and they wouldn't even bother about looking at what I was doing, because they wanted pictures taken with me and with them and Wayne Rooney, basically. And it took me 5 days to kind of get up into the mountains there. And I got to the final checkpoint. I had to get out into Kyrgyzstan. And, I'm wanting to kind of stay a little bit inconspicuous, but it's pretty hard when everyone's cheering you, slapping you on the back and thrusting you to the front of the line to remain inconspicuous. And then you get to the front and it's kind of, oh dear. There's kind of lights like this everywhere, there's filmed stuff, there's computers, there's TVs, and I just thought, how am I going to escape from this one? And I put my passport through the little thingy, and he greets me, Assalamu alaikum. And I kind of returned the greeting, Walaikum salam, as best as I could to try and ease things. But as soon as he sees the passport and he's got it on the computer, he's looking from one to the other. And I'm kind of thinking, this isn't going very well at all. He beckons over his supervisor. And at that point, I kind of felt as though there was only one thing I could do. So I kind of puffed out my chest, chin up, and pointed at myself, and 2 words, Wayne Rooney. And he kind of looked at me like this, and then he started coming round, and everyone else in the office started coming round out of the office, And I still wasn't sure. I kind of thinking, I had enough time to think, am I going back to Heathrow? And I kind of put my hands up just in case there was any sort of real issue. But instead of pulling out guns, they were pulling out their phones again to take more pictures. And they kind of slammed the stamp down, like massive cheer. They gave me my passport, and massive cheer from me as I kind of left the place. But then it wasn't long before I needed more assistance because I was beaten to the floor by the Kyrgyz mafia. And then I was, as I climbed into the mountains, I was attacked by a man on horseback with his whip. And unfortunately, I didn't have any more contacts. I'd used my kind of phone a friend. And so I woke up the next morning with my face stuck to the pillow because of all the blood that was around my face. And those mountains can continue on into China. And so the highest pass in China is 4,900 meters, which I don't know what's that, 4 times what Ben Nevis is. And obviously there's not a lot of oxygen. It starts getting really, really cold. And I was trying to get to a place. Oh my God, I've left off loads of pictures. I was trying to get to a place called Karakul Lake. This is on one of the highest points in Kyrgyzstan. And this is Karakul Lake, and it's renowned for its kind of mirror lake with the reflections of the thingies, and I really, really, really wanted to get there. So I was pushing on and pushing on. It was getting colder and colder and colder, and I just thought suddenly it was just getting too dangerous. And so I kind of pulled over and I put my tent in this position, just kind of on the side of the road next to someone's dwelling, and I tried to cook up some noodles, which were my basically sustenance. Thank you. During the trip, I called it Noodle Surprise because the surprise was it was just noodles, and so I was trying to cook the noodles, but the flame was just with the lack of oxygen, there was just no heat to it, and so I ended up soaking the noodles and eating those, and it kind of tasted like the chewing gum you get under kids' seats at school, just kind of put in there and just chewing on that and trying to swallow it down, which wasn't too great, but. Anyway, so I was lucky enough to get back into the tent. I woke up the next morning, and it's cool to have the Cotswold brand on here because they were so completely and utterly awesome to me. They gave me all my kit for free, absolutely top quality. So when I woke up, my sleeping bag had frozen solid on the outside, my tent had frozen on the inside and on the outside, and still I was really snugly and warm inside it. So that was completely and utterly awesome. And when I touched the tent, it snowed inside, where it kind of slowly cracked off the thing, which was quite romantic on my own. Right, and then I think I need to kind of tell you a little bit more about my mum. So I've already told you she's a bit of a worrier, and this is a story about her rather than anything more. And from China, they've banned. In this western part of China, they banned the internet and they banned being able to call outside of the country to try and... there's been a few problems there, like they've been in Tibet, and it's just their way of kind of clamping down on it. And so I wasn't able to contact... to be honest, I was telling you I was mummy's boy. Nearly every day I was on the trip, I sent a text to my mum. And... put your hand up, mum, I didn't see you there. I thought you were back with Dad. Really high, put it. And... So I was sending her a text every day just because I knew they were both so worried that they thought I was going to die. They thought I was going to be executed on national TV, or I was going to freeze to death somewhere up in the mountains. So when I was in China, just before I kind of lost civilization, there was another couple that I travelled with quite a lot. They were travelling by road and I was travelling by the bike, but we still kept seeing each other. And I asked one of the guys, this girl Katya, I gave her mum's number, and I said, will you phone my mum just to say that I'm all right, because I hadn't phoned her because we'd been in China for 2 weeks or something. And this was just before I left, and I was going to Pakistan, and I said, just let her know I'm going to Pakistan, and everything's fine, I'm all healthy and well. And I knew I think she was leaving a day after or something. And so when I was on the way, I actually met up with these other guys. They kind of stopped me, and they'd got a World Service radio, and they turned their World Service radio on just so we could have a little catch up on what's going on in the world. And somehow they got reception. I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know whether World Service works in China or not, whether it was because we were getting close to Pakistan. But anyway, the message was, war has broken out between Pakistan and Afghanistan. And at that exact same day was the moment that my friend Katya phoned my mum to say, it's all right, Dan's going to Pakistan. So you can imagine Mum's love of that, and it gets worse. Because to get from China into Pakistan, they won't allow anything, no motorbikes, only cars or buses are allowed to travel from China to Pakistan through no man's land. It's only a short distance. But when I got on the bus, I actually had reception from the Pakistani side, and I was able to text my mum to say, I'm on the bus that goes from Kashgar to Islamabad, but I'm only doing this small section. And so that was kind of nice for mum to hear that I was still alive. Until the next morning when the news service said the one bus a day that travels from Kashgar to Islamabad has been blown up by the Taliban. And at that point I know my mum pulled over and she shed a few tears. She was on her way to work and she shed a few tears, and then she thought that was it. She thought this was the moment she'd been waiting for, and she thought it was all over. So if we can just give my mum a massive round of applause. And so in Pakistan, I survived grenades, machine gun fire, being put in a jail there. These are all stories you can read about if you read the book. You've Gone Too Far This Time, Sir, by Danny Bent. It's very good, apparently. But then you get into India and you face the real dangers. And it's more to do with the hygiene and sorts of things like this. So I was thinking of a typical lunch break, where I would sit down, I'd order some dal from the chef, the pot is covered in flies, the ground is covered in flies, there's a swollen rat in front of me, 2 meters away, that's kind of felt like safe distance, and that's absolutely covered in flies, and then a cow will come, and it'll come and start nibbling the paper that's by the swollen rat, and the cows in India are renowned for being able to digest paper now, because basically they just graze on the rubbish sites the whole time. Anyway, the cow disrupts the flies dash off, they kind of come my way, stopping only briefly at the rabid dogs, like their wounds and things like this. Then they fly onto the chef's apron that maybe was once white, but is now, they're pretty good camouflage for the flies on there. And then as the waiter, with his thumb in my dal, puts it down in front of me, they all make a dash for the dal, grab what they can, and then make their way back to the toilet where they probably originated from. And it's not really any wonder that I was soon sharing those toilets. And I'm going to be able to tell you a few more stories about toilets. Favourite subject. The toilets, oh my goodness me. Their holes in the ground tend to be overflowing with stuff you put in toilets. That's not toilet paper. And then other ones you get, there's like a little bit of a gully there, but people have somehow done poos round the side that looks like, I know when we were a kid, Dad was brilliant at it. He used to kind of get the wet sand, and then dribble it down like this, and it would kind of form these stalactites, or stalagmites, anyone know? Mites. Stalagmites of poo on the side of the thingy. And other ones, like you come across and you're like, yes, look at that pink, lovely, smooth, warm seat cover, because it was starting to get colder, obviously, in these mountain areas. But that was absolutely covered in poo as well. Let me think, there was another one. Oh yeah, no, well maybe I will. And I had a really, really bad bout in India at one point, and so you're kind of squatting down like this, and I think I had to go about every 30 minutes or something. But the clever people that built the toilet had put a shelf just above the toilet. So you squat down, you're in absolute agony, your stomach's wrenching, your legs are kind of going, your head's dizzy, and you jump up, you get up from it, and you smash your head on the shelf. And I'm not one of those people that learns from their mistakes. It happened every single time. And it kind of knocks you back down into your own mess, which isn't really that great. And then there's the bugs that kind of live in these toilets. And there could be, like, things from some sort of Alien versus Predator thing, and you have to kind of avoid those ones whilst you're in there. And they weren't the only bugs that I came across. I mean, you kind of started getting a little bit used to having bed bugs and you know, you get a few little bites. It wasn't actually, I never actually experienced anything too bad, but you kind of got used to just the little feelings and trying to sleep through it, basically. So there was one day, and these bed bugs, and they were jumping on my face, and I was just like, these are a bit bigger than normal. It really wasn't very pleasant. I kind of grabbed them, and you know, like fleas are hard, so I would grab them. I didn't really know what I was doing. I just crush it as hard as I could, and then kind of chuck it on the floor, hoping it wouldn't come back. And they just kept coming. They really kept landing in these bits of right in my eyes. Well, even my eyes closed, it wasn't so bad, but obviously it wasn't that good. And then I thought, well, I can't sleep like this, and I was actually met with 3 other cyclists at this point. They were doing their kind of various little trips from wherever to wherever, and they were all really sick and like vomiting and diarrhea, and they'd finally got off to sleep, and neither of them were in the toilet, which was absolutely fantastic. But I didn't want to switch on the light and wake them up again, because then it's all going to start again. And so I didn't want to switch on the light, so I kind of went down to my bag, and I got my roll mat out, my camping mat, and I put that out on the bed, hoping that would kind of stop them jumping onto me. And I eventually managed, it didn't actually do anything to stop them, but eventually I did manage to get to sleep, which was fantastic. So then I woke up the next morning. I was kind of, you know, plodding into the bathroom, and there was a kind of shard of mirror, a kind of broken bit of mirror that had been placed there. And I kind of looked at it, you know, making sure I was looking hot still. And I kind of walked past, and I was like, what? I looked back, and I had a big ginger beard at this point, was absolutely riddled with maggots. They were all in my hair. So I forgot about going to the toilet at that point. I went back to my bed, and there's a rotten beam just above my bed. There were 4 of us in a row, and just here there was a rotten bit of beam that had maggots falling out of it constantly. My bed was absolutely covered with them. So this is a little picture. I wanted to get them out before any photos were taken, but the result was that I kind of had a drastic haircut and a shave, and that was the resulting haircut. But all these hardships that I kind of went through, somehow I'd managed to get my head into this kind of way way that they weren't bad. So when I had the gun pointed at my head like this, I was obviously very scared, but there was a tiny part of me thinking, this is gonna make an awesome blog. And same for all of them, really. And but the overwhelming factor of the trip, the thing that kind of I remember more than anything else, is the human kindness I experienced. So I've told you about Maqsood in Uzbekistan. He went so out of his way. He wouldn't allow me to pay for the Russian mafia wanted some money, and he paid for all that as well, which kind of was surreal, really. And so I was invited into homes, I was invited to temples, I was invited into mosques, anywhere where I could be invited, that people would invite me, and then you'd kind of be held hostage for a small amount of time, kind of not against your will, but they didn't want you to leave because there was more to show you and more to give you. I mean, I was in Abbottabad. I don't know whether that rings any bells, but that was where the notorious terrorist was found recently in Pakistan. And I stopped there for a cup of tea, and a tribal Pakistani man came up to me and he's like, "You have to stay here. You have to stay here." And I was kind of, okay, I'm going to stay. And he ran off. And really, for all I knew, he could have been going to get Osama himself. He's like, "Oh, hi Osama, come and take a seat." But 15 minutes or so, he came back, and he'd got a shalwar kameez, which is the long shirt with the really, really baggy pants, because I was still cycling in Lycra and I was staying true to the cause. But in Pakistan, it wasn't taken quite so nicely. Anyway, he gave me his, it was an absolutely beautifully pressed, only slightly soiled shalwar kameez. He was this big. But anyway, it was great to be given, like, you know, he's just got his own clothes and just given them to someone. It's the kind of, the stories are unbelievable. And I went up into the mountains and I met some Vikings. Give us a rah, Vikings! Rah. Yes! And And sorry, I wasn't meaning to do that. And so I went into the mountains, and as I was cycling in up these hills, I was giving monks high fives along the way. It was absolutely amazing because the hills are so steep that it's the only thing that could have kept me going. But when I got to the top, one monk kind of grabbed me. He said, "You have to come to my home." Okay. And he dragged me into his home, and there was he didn't really speak to me until we got into his house. And then he said he'd had a dream the previous day that oh God, what's the leader of the Tibetans called? The Dalai Lama, in his dream, had told him to there was going to be a cyclist arriving in yellow, which was the colour of the jersey I'd been wearing, and the jersey I'd been wearing was the one with the star on the whole time. I had a few spares, but I didn't want to take the one with the star off, so that one I've still kept it, but it's pretty rancid. So the monk must have thought that dream, like, oh, this doesn't mean anything at all. I don't know whether he'd even seen a bicycle before, let alone some Western guy in yellow riding it. But anyway, when he saw me, he kind of grabbed me and he kind of took me in, and he was treating me amazingly so as well. Another time, on the way out of China, I was pretty desperate for food. I was pretty desperate for food the whole way, really. I lost a lot of weight, which would have been good for my cycling if I hadn't stopped in India and got quite fat afterwards. But sorry. Oh yeah. So I was in China, coming down. I was really hungry, and I asked some people where I could get some food. And they pointed me in this direction, and I went through, and masses of people everywhere. And there was one lady really decked out in everything, with like a big, lovely hat and the dingly bits hanging down, and this beautiful dress. And she was standing there, and as I slightly past her were these three men sitting down. And as I kind of walked past them, they were looking pretty disgruntled. And I was welcomed into this house, where I was fed, and the mother and father, who could speak some English, were kind of grilling me about my life in England and all this sort of stuff. Whilst I was kind of talking with my mouth full, just shoveling as much food in as possible. Yeah, English very nice, yeah. Bits of food falling down. And I had the same shirt on, so I probably wasn't smelling too great still. And what I'd actually done is walked into a kind of suitors parade. So they were trying to find someone to marry their daughter. And strangely, she didn't choose me. But it's just those kind of experiences where you're having the most amazing, people are treating you so utterly amazingly. And then it comes that I arrived in the slum in Mumbai, and it just was one of the projects where I was actually raising, well, we all, like a load of us actually, who are here, kind of donated to the charity. Really making a difference. And I went to see a women's workers union, and the women there were telling me how they'd set this union up, and they'd been beaten, they'd been abused, they'd been shouted at in the street, kind of rejected from society for having the gall to do such a thing. And I was sitting with the women, and there was a translator here, and then the woman said something. She was quite impassioned, and the guy said to me, and then the results came, and at that point, I knew what I was about to hear, and I absolutely burst into tears for a good 5 or 10 minutes, where I just uncontrollable tears, knowing that I would go to 10 times, would have cycled 10 times the distance to have this difference. Because I guess I need to put it into context that I was kind of seeing along the way women had been treated as you slowly got more and more into Asia, and some of it is really, really unpleasant, and there's some bits like that in the book as well that I've got to witness firsthand, which was pretty frigging disgusting. So when I kind of saw that we'd been helping this women's union, I was absolutely in floods of tears, and then said the results came, and they had they had gained more results in the first few months than the men had achieved in the last kind of 3 years. So, and their rating in society had just gone sky high because of this. Going from absolutely being beaten and stuff to being kind of celebrities of the slum was absolutely amazing. And you wander around the slum, and there'll be groups of people, and they invite me to come and have tea with them, and you may be paying something like. So you're paying something like 10 pence or 15p for a tea, and they wouldn't allow me to put my hand in my pocket. I've got a big camera. I'm taking pictures of them, but they wouldn't allow me to do anything. They'd all put a few rupees in together, and they'd buy 2 cups of tea. One which was mine, and the other one which they shared amongst, say, 8. And this was just like the kind of, these people have got nothing, but they will give absolutely everything. And then suddenly it was one day to go, and all that lay between me and my final destination was a tiger reserve with the highest count of tigers in the whole of India. So yeah, child's play. So I'm cycling along. I get to the border, and I kind of really had it set in my mind. This was it. I'm gonna arrive today. And after all this time, that's a powerful thing to be thinking at this point. And I got to the thing, and I said, how much to get through? And he was like, he looked at me and he looked at Shirley. He's like, too slow. And I was like, no, I can cycle fast. It's all right. Look, ask some of my friends. But he's like, no, too slow. It wasn't and after a lot of grovelling, there was no way he was going to let me through. So I was absolutely put out. I was just thinking, oh God, because I had to go all the way back to where I'd come from that morning, and then back round. He was going to add something like 120 kilometres onto, and which was never going to be achievable in one day. And then as I'm sitting there looking at my map, trying to work out how well I'm going to do, there's this kind of roar in the distance, and it wasn't the roar of a tiger, it was the roar of motorbikes coming my way, and there's a big dust everywhere, and they screech past, and I'm kind of mouthful of dust and in my ears and everything, and I'm kind of cursing under my breath, bloody motorcyclists. They screech, they turn around, they kind of cycle back, and they come, once I got the dust out of my eyes again, I could kind of look at them. One of them lifted up his visa and said, "You're Danny?" And massive white smile, and he said, "We are your royal escort." And he walked up to the guy at the gate, and I swear all the Indian people I met were magicians. He had a note in his hand at one point, and then the note was gone. And the people know how to kind of take it like this, put it in their pocket, and have their hand there like this without anyone having seen it at all. Anyway, so we got into the tiger reserve, and obviously I'm a bit scared, and we're cycling along, 2 bikes in front of me, 2 bikes behind, and I need to tell you something, because when I'm going to put those, this is just on a PowerPoint now, I think, so hopefully he's going to flip through. When I met Stan, the guy who said he was our royal escort, I somehow wanted to tell him about, I talked on my video about the star that I'd got on my shirt and how it kept me safe all the way. And I met Stan, and I told him the story, and I went to point, and the star had fallen off my shirt. So now my protection had come in the motorbikes, the star could leave. It was really, really amazing, and it kind of felt a little bit spiritual and all this sort of stuff. But anyway, so we're going through the park, and Stan said to me, Stan said, "Why do you look so worried?" And I thought it was quite obvious. We're going through a tiger reserve, and I said, "The tigers." He said, "Oh, no, you don't need to worry about the tigers." I was like, "Oh, thank God. Phew. It's the elephants you want to worry about." And he said, "But it's okay. We're not going to see any elephants. They only come out morning and dusk." So we cycled on, and suddenly he stops. I crashed into the back of him, knocked the number plate off his bike, and they make a huddle. And then Stan comes over to me again. He picks up his number plate on the way, puts it in his inside pocket, and he said, "Problem, elephants." And he said, "You have to go fast and you have to go right." And we'd already discussed that Shirley doesn't go that fast, really. And anyway, so I had a little word with Shirley. I was like, "Oh, can we do it? Do you think we can do this?" She didn't say anything, but I'm pretty sure she was confident. So I got on and we went for it. Staying right and going as fast as we possibly could. And it got to a stage where I was passing the elephants where I could actually smell the dung, or that was kind of sitting like a football at the side of the road. And then in my imagination, I'm thinking these elephants are after me. I could almost feel the ground rumbling and the noise of these things kind of chasing. And I won't tell you again what happened, so you can actually read something. But anyway, I survived, I didn't get trampled and I didn't get eaten by elephants. And slowly, there were, as we got out of the reserve, there were more and more people joining us. There were a few cyclists, a few more motorbikes, and we were kind of going along. And these people are riding bikes, which you barely call them bikes, but anyway, they were on them. And we were kind of going along, and I knew we were getting close because we'd gone through one of the towns that I knew was right nearby, and about what I thought was about 1 kilometre to go, I saw a festival, and in India there are festivals every single day, it seems, at least, different types, and I remember thinking, I wonder what this one's for. People were playing the drums and singing and kind of waving banners and all this sort of stuff, and it could have been for anything. And as I was getting closer, I kind of noticed they'd got some Western writing on their posters, and which was kind of a little bit weird, especially this far down south and out in the outbacky type of way. And then I noticed they were wishing someone happy birthday, and then as I got even closer, every child was holding up my Velo Love little logo, which I made for the trip, and some of them were holding it upside down, some of them the right way, and they were actually there for my arrival. And as I got closer and closer, the noise just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and people got crazier and crazier and crazier and dancing around and all having a wild time. And then I got there, and we went on the festival all the way to the school, and in the school there was cake for everyone, and I kind of stood there with Shirley by my side, and I wanted to tell the kids what an amazing time I had. I want to tell them the stories. I've got stories from the children back in the UK who I wanted to share with them. I got little gifts for the kids as well. But all I could do was crouch down next to Shirley and shed my tears because because I'd lived my dream. And then living there in India, I was for a portion of the time I lived in one of the mud huts where they're actually out in the jungle, and there was a tourist was killed by an elephant just as I was arriving, and so they were a little bit kind of cautious about it. But I stayed there for some time, and I stayed outside the chief's house. I'm going to have to whiz through here because I thought I'd be talking longer. You can see all these on my website anyway. And so I was in the chief's house, and me and the principal from the school, we were sleeping outside because the place was so full of people. And we're talking around a campfire to keep the wild animals away, because it really was just a hut, and with it opened up onto the way people were. I crashed it. And so I was with the chief, and then in the night we went back to sleep, and the chief woke me up this is the first night. The chief woke me up, and he was like, "Can you hear it?" And you can hear this kind of mewing or crying, whatever a tiger does. And he's like, "Tiger, it's a tiger." It's like, he saw the fear on my face, and he's kind of, "No, it's okay. It's a long way away." And because by this time the fire's gone out, and we're all kind of lying in the pitch black, and I had a little head torch. And then later on, I fell back to sleep, and I woke back up. I was woken again by one of the dogs in the part of the hut, and it was absolutely going mental. And I switched on my lamp, and just as far as me in the front row here, there was a leopard kind of having a look at me. And as soon as I put the lamp on it, it ran away. And but the chief was the only guy with a cow in the village, so that was the only tiger we saw on the way. So the chief, and so that ran away. Everything was all groovy. I've totally lost my place again. Basically, and so the next morning, everyone starts brushing their teeth with a piece of charcoal, rubbing it around their mouth like this. And let me try and get to some pictures. And this is the way they brush their teeth. And I thought, well, I've got to do that as well, because I'm living in their house and everything like this. So I tried brushing my teeth with a piece of charcoal, which did actually here. I did actually leave your teeth feeling quite sparkly and clean, but it was without the minty fresh breath. It's still a picture here as well. I was actually at the school, and I asked the kids whether who wanted to cycle back to England with me. So we got some takers, but Right. Right. So what I wanted to talk about is the fact that we had. I'd lived my dream, and again since the trip, I've written my book, and I don't know how many we've sold. Tim's over there, but we were thinking something around 70, 80, maybe a few more books. That's 70 or 80,000, sorry. And that would be a bit rubbish, wouldn't it? But that's what I was expecting. I actually wrote the book for my niece and nephew, so, and you know, for me to remember, because I've got such a bad memory, I wanted to have this kind of record of what I'd done, and then a few people liked it, I sent it off, and then I got rejected thousands of times, and then Tim actually contacted me through Facebook, which was quite amazing. We've actually, this is the first time we've met, and I want to get out of him how he knew that I'd written the book or whatever. But I'm not even sure he's going to know. It's just spiritual. Yeah, he's shaking his head. He's wishing he didn't contact me on Facebook anyway. But I've lived two dreams. I lived my dream. I got there, and then it's always a dream for me to write a book, and I don't even know why. Because when I was at school, I'm dyslexic, and when someone asked me to write about something, I just couldn't bear it, and it would end up being quite mediocre to poor. And if I told my teachers now at school that I'd got this best-selling book, I think their jaws would hit the floor. But what it does show you, and if you can take anything from this talk, is that anything is possible. This dyslexic boy who was having special reading, Mum used to read with me every single night to try and get my reading ability up and try and engage the part of the brain that dyslexics can't use. Anything is possible, and you really need to try and live your dreams. So this brings me neatly on to chapter 2 of this little talk. It's a really, really small chapter. And then we can all go and drink some more wine. So because I've lived my dream, and a few people have contacted me through writing my book, and they're saying, what can I do? And I know there's a kind of general feeling in people that, yeah, we want to do something kind of fun, cool. It doesn't have to take you 6 months to do it. It can just be a day's climb of a mountain or something like this. And then this idea came to me that maybe, and this is the first time I've used my maths degree since university, really. That's not true, people at CBRE. I use it every day. So I got this idea that if we had 1,000 people, and each of the 1,000 people had 100 friends, most of us got that on Facebook or whatever, friends or family, and if those 100 friends can give £10 each to our one cause, then we're going to raise £1 million. So I've set up this idea, and it slowly was growing and growing, and then slowly and slowly more and more people were interested, and I was kind of like, well, let's go for it. So I've set up my website. You can just see it on there, 11111.org, and it explains a little bit more about it. But if you always, I was going to say, let's just have, 10 seconds of just quiet now, and just think back to when you were at school. So my dream was to cycle around the world and raise money for charity. And like my adulthood dream was to try and write a book. And so let's just have 10 seconds, just have a little think back to junior school, and that time when you were leaving school and what you wanted to do, and like some of the dreams that are in your head now. And so let's just have 10 seconds, just have a little think about it. That's enough. But anyway, so even if you couldn't think of anything now, there are going to be things in your life you've always wished you've done. And I guess what I'm kind of saying is if you wish to do it, because it is possible. And especially when we're doing this, and there's going to be a whole load of us all together. Everyone's going to, if you're wanting to get a visa for Kyrgyzstan or something, you can ask my dad. He sorted it out. But there's going to be someone who can help you, and we can all do it together and try and help each other kind of live our dreams. And if you've read my book, you know I refer to the BFG quite a lot, because Roald Dahl was quite kind of strong role model, I guess, in my childhood. And I refer to the BFG quite a lot. And what I kind of thought is that maybe what I'm doing with this Live Your Dream, it's 111, it's supposed to look a bit like a barcode. But Richard Mellick's here, he's going to design me a new one, he doesn't know it yet. It's one that looks a bit better. So, what was I talking about again? I keep losing it, sorry. So what I was thinking is I can be the BFG, and I'm going to capture all your dreams and make them come true. And those dreams, we're going to pop in a little suitcase, and we're going to send them off to Africa or Asia, and through the really wonderful Keep a Child Alive, amazing, amazing charity, they give 100% of money raised to the causes. They get their funding elsewhere through sponsorship and sponsorship from companies to actually keep the company afloat. And every single penny, if you were to do something like this, every single penny goes straight to them. Like bypasses me. I don't want anything to do with it, and then it goes straight on to the charity. Plus, you get your gift aid and all that kind of groovy stuff as well. So I'm harvesting these genes. We're going to put them in the suitcase. We're going to send them off to Africa and Asia so that kids that are born with AIDS, or kids that are born without a mum and dad because they've died of AIDS, can they can actually start having a dream. At the moment, their life expectancy is so short, or life is so hard that they can't even fathom what a dream is. But with the kind of retrovirus drugs that these guys supply, and the orphanages and the whole package that goes along with it, these children can start kind of steadying themselves, thinking I've got a life ahead of me, and maybe they can have some dreams, and maybe we can make some of those dreams come true as well. Yeah. And I should have left it at that. But anyway, businesses and schools can get involved as well. But that's all something that you can find on the website. So, thank you very much for coming. Yeah. Okay, so
if anyone's purchased, or I can say it if you want.
No, sorry. Oh God, is this working now? Yeah. So I'm going to pop over around there. I'm going to have some glasses of wine, which are probably very much needed now. And you guys dig in. I think we got loads, and I don't know whether people actually had time to get it, and it was a bit.
We're actually closing the
Oh, you're closing in when?
In 15 minutes.
15 minutes. So really, you got to neck it.
If you want to purchase a book.
Yeah, and if you want to purchase a book, I'm going to be just over there. Happy to sign them.
A
few more minutes.
To purchase them.
Yeah, to purchase them. And then, some questions. Yeah, okay, let's have some questions. Because what we can do is take the books into the cafe shop.
Cafe.
So what we're going to do, we're going to finish, and then we're going to go down to the coffee shop downstairs, where I think they're going to give us a discount on goodies.
Yeah.
So we have some more wine after we finish this lot. I told you, they're great, aren't they? National Geographic, way forward. So I was going to ask if there's any questions. Oh no, it was alright. I got so many brownie points when I was a kid. It was fine. I earned loads. I was the perfect child, as you can imagine. Any other questions? Yes, hand? The best bit? Oh, the best loo? Well, no, that's easy, because it was in the Ukraine. And I'd been drinking the tap water, which apparently is slightly contaminated still with radioactive material. And I'd been drinking it for about a week, and then these people were joking about it, saying, "Oh, thank God we haven't been drinking the water here." And I was like, what? And I thought I'd got away with it, but a few days later, it went horribly wrong. And it is actually Mum and Dad came out to visit me in the Ukraine, and at one point I was in a cafe. I was like, oh God. And there's no toilet in the cafe, and I had to kind of run up the street, ran back down. There's a little portaloo, and oh my God. Mum's face is looking shocked even just thinking about it, because I actually made them go and have a look at it because it was so disgusting. It was normal portaloo, so normal kind of UK type portaloo, apart from the fact that the decor was poo. All around the side, on the little handle squidgy thingy thing, whatever, the flush, all up the walls, up the door. It was unbelievable. I kind of just opened it, it was like, no way. And it's like, oh yes. As another turn of the stomach went. Good question. Got me another chance to talk about toilet. I missed that one out. Any others? That's good. Cool. Okay. Well, thanks again for coming. It's been really, really great. Oh God. Yeah, go on, Maddie. What's the next book? Well, I don't know yet, but let's see what happens, because we've already got Steve. Steve's my first warrior, and there's some nice pictures actually of Steve in a tiny little crop top like this, and a tiny, tiny little pair of briefs. And we did a triathlon together, and he raised his it's what he's always dreamed of doing. Always dreamed of running. So he always dreamed of doing a 100-kilometre bike ride in a pair of Speedos. And just because of the pain and the thought of the embarrassment, I think he made the money he just put a few posts on Facebook, and the money just kind of zoomed into his account. So Steve was the first warrior, testing out a few little things. And so don't be kind of scared of the fact that you might not be able to get the full funds. It really comes in fast, and if it doesn't, then there's going to be lots of contacts, and I can just send out a message saying, Sarah has run her marathon and is just short of £1,000. Let's try and get it up. And I'm pretty sure, but maybe I'm being optimistic, that by the end of that day she'll have £1,000. So yeah. So anyway, what I was saying, there's going to be loads and loads of stories. So Steve's is one, and then there's going to be more and more, and there's going to be people doing things that they've really, really always dreamed, especially if there's some really heartfelt ones. And I wondered whether we could do a kind of collaboration and put these stories into a book, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. But if I talked about all the other things that are in my head, then we'd be here for quite some time. But I really, really, really want to write another one, because it's been so amazing, and not least just because of getting however many people there are together, like friends, family, everything. It's like, this is just a dream come true. It's for what I was kind of born for. I love it. Any more? Oh, there's one there, Dad. No. Taliban triathlon coming soon. Get your entries in. Cool. All done? Good. Let's go and drink wine. Right, we'll go then.